Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Royal Instinct. Today we're going to be watching a video, a couple videos about why failure doesn't exist. The videos will be looking at Kobe Bryant. We'll be looking at different angles on this, what the cure to burnout is, and how to end suffering. Okay, we are living in interesting times. We are living in times where the world is divisive. We are divided by the elites. We are told to not think for ourselves. We are told to listen to our betters, listen to the people in charge, listen to the people who make the decisions. I, for one, am not somebody who is willing to stand for those things. I'm willing to sacrifice and try something new. Okay. I don't believe in the current system. I believe that the system at the moment is fucked. The people in charge don't have your best interest in for you, and therefore we must come up with something new. We must come up with something that the world has never seen before. And to do that, people like me, people who think similar to me, need to come together and attempt to make something new. How do we do that? Well, first of all, this is a signal to you. This is an invitation to you. I'm sending out the bat signal. I am trying to send a message across the world, looking for superheroes, looking for the Avengers, and I am assembling the Avengers. We are bringing a team together, and I want you to join that team. Who is a right fit for that team? It is people who are ambitious, who are sick and tired of the current system, who are willing to make something new. People who have an interesting perspective. Okay, you might be somebody who knows a lot about many things. However, you haven't quite figured out how to make that into a success. Okay. Everybody has their own unique perspective in life. Everybody has their own interpretation of things, and it is your responsibility to turn that into genius. And what do I mean by genius? I mean by bringing out that interesting perspective, offer it to the world so humanity can move forward and advance. And that is what we're all about. We're trying to organize a group together of people who have similar sort of interests, have similar sort of goals, are ambitious, and are willing to fight for what they believe is right. Okay. The reason why most people aren't able to do that is because they don't value themselves high enough. They outsource their esteem and their decision makers and allow others to be the judge of them. Many people complain about feeling judged. It is your fault, because you've been outsourcing judgment of yourself to other people. You're allowing the world to tell you who you are instead of telling the world who you are. Okay, you're allowing the world to dictate what you should do and what you can't do. Instead, I want you to flip it on his head. I want you to go out there, decide for yourself what your values are, what your beliefs are, what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to die for, and bring that out into the world. Okay, that is how great men come about. That is how great people come about. That is how geniuses are born. And I want to create an environment together, a community together of people who are able to help one another stay on the path, stay on course for glory. Okay, and what will be the end outcome? The end outcome will be a that you will build a following. You'll be seen somebody as competent. You'll be seen you'll be seen as someone who has the ability to be a natural leader, to be a charismatic leader, and lead your people to glory. Okay. Once you're able to do that, you'll be able to buy an island. You'll be able to start a new country, build a new kingdom. Okay, and as the builder of that kingdom, you'll be someone who is the king of that kingdom, the king of the land. You get to set the rules. You get to make the world and live out the world as you see fit. Okay. But most people are stopped by the very first step because they believe in failure. They believe that they're not good enough, and they allow the fear of failure and fear itself to stop them.
There's two.
And here's Kobe Bryant speaking about failing and fear.
Two types of players who love to win and players who hate to lose. Which one are you?
I'm neither.
So just quickly, what he did there is she asked him a question. It's like, there's players who hate to lose and there's players who love to win. Like, which one are you? And he's like, I'm not even playing by your rules. Okay, I'm dictating my own rules and building his own category in essence. Okay, he is not following what she said, what she is expecting of him. He is deciding what category he himself is. So he's telling the world who he is instead of letting the world dictate, or letting her dictate in this instant, who he is.
Meaning? Meaning that, you know, I play to figure things out. I play to learn something, right? Because I think if you play with a fear of failure, or you play with the will to win, or that supersedes the fear of failure, I think it's a weakness either way, right? Because if you play with the fear of failing, you'll have the pressure on yourself to play, you know, to capitulate to that fear. If you play with the sense of I want to win, then you have the fear of what happens if you don't. But if you find common ground in the middle, in the center, then it doesn't matter. You're unfazed by either, right? And that enables you to really just stay in the moment, stay connected to it.
And what he's saying is he is being the dictator of his own life. He is being the dictator of his own fate. Okay, he is taking control of his life by allowing himself to decide what emotions he wants to feel, what he wants to indulge, what he doesn't want to indulge. Okay, and he talks a lot about staying present to the moment. A lot of that comes from his coach, Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson was the coach of the Chicago Bulls during the Michael Jordan era, if you say. So together, Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan won 6 championship rings together. And then the Lakers came and took him to the West Coast, to the Lakers, and built a new dream team. Okay, and Phil, along with Kobe, together they won 5 more championships. Okay, Phil Jackson is the most decorated basketball coach in history, and one of his big tenets or philosophies was came from Buddhism. Okay, he and Zen teachings. Okay, he really believed in meditation and connecting to the present moment in order to get the best result. Why is that an effective strategy? It's because you remove all fears and doubts of the past, and you remove all the fears of possible failure for the future. Okay, and when you remove those fears and all the self-doubt that comes with it, you can move forward towards success, right? However, most people in today's society, they get stopped out at the first hurdle. Okay, they in essence don't have an inner compass. They don't have the inner strength to move forward because they allowed, you know, the fear from society to seep into their mindset. Okay, if we was to get rid of all the fears and self-doubts that hold you back, then you could move forward towards success. Okay, until you are able to do that, until you're willing to let go of all those things, you will always remain at the mercy of your negative thinking
and not feel anything other than what's in front of you. So, you know, I try to just be dead center.
So a lot of people in general are afraid of failure. How did you become one of those people who doesn't seem to be afraid of failing?
Failures, it doesn't exist. It's not.
I mean, he just says it there. He's like, you know, it doesn't exist for him. Okay, the fear of failure isn't part of his vocabulary. He is willing to go where no other people have gone before. He is willing to push his boundaries. You know, you only have one life. Okay, and he's a good example as well, because he is someone who had his one life and tragically passed away in a helicopter crash. Right? You don't want to but the thing with Kobe is, you know, he was someone who lived a full life. Do you know what I mean? He was always already retired at that point. He was making moves in the business world, building his brand. So even though his passing is tragic, you know, people may say he's gone too soon. He's lived more of a life than most humans will ever experience. Okay, I believe Alexander the Great died when he was 34. Let's see. So Alexander the Great, yeah, he died by the age of 32. And by that time, he conquered the whole known world and parts of the unknown world, which included India at the time. Okay. You know, even though he only had 30 years of life, 32 years of life on Earth, he did more with that time. And that's why his name still is remembered today. Okay. And, you know, people get to, you know, 80, 90 years old, you know, 100, whatever, right? And they haven't lived a single day of their life because they never were able to get out of the slave mindset. They were never able to escape societal expectations. They were never able to live life on their own terms. And that's not what I want from you. For you, I want you to find your inner Alexander and become a great in your own name. Okay. I want you to conquer your own kingdom. I want you to establish your own land, establish your own dominion, and become a king worthy of rule, become a benevolent king, become a philosopher king, become somebody people look up to, people aspire to be around. Okay, live the best life possible, live a life of luxury. Don't let fear or the fear of failure ever stop you.
Existent. What the hell does that mean? Seriously, what does failure mean? It's not. It doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. What does it mean?
You pulling the Jedi mind trick on me right now. I was like, does it exist?
No, I'm serious. Like, I'm trying to think, like, how can I?
She can't even fathom it. She's like, you know, is he pulling a Jedi mind trick on me? Because, you know, she's like, well, I have fear of failure. I have fears in my head. Like, and he's like, it doesn't exist. And yes and no. You know, you have to be smart. You have to plan. You have to understand yourself and what your capacity is to handle stress. And that is the only way that you'll ever overcome fear. Okay, you have to go into a place where you are uncomfortable. You have to go into a place where you are more likely to gain attention if the wrong outcomes are made. You know, if you make the wrong moves, then people will laugh at you. And you know, you have to always remember that, you know, whatever people think of you is irrelevant to the greater story of your life.
Explain it. So let's use happy endings, right? And then we can relate this to failure, why it's not existent. Like, you know, everybody talks about, like, everybody wants a happy ending, right? Now let's go to the reality of it, right? Let's look at a fairy tale story. Let's look at Snow White. Mm-hmm. She gets a happy ending. She finds Prince or whatever. She goes on. She lives happily ever after. Well, I call bullshit on that, because 2 months later, the fact is they had an argument and he's sleeping on the couch. Right? So the point is, the story continues. The story continues. So if you fail on Monday, the only way it's a failure on Monday is if you decide to not progress from that. Right? So to me, that's why failure.
That's why it's you have to look at life as an infinite game that you're playing, right? And every day you keep trying, you keep making little adjustments, you keep making little incremental improvements on your life, on yourself, and take that new information and go ahead and move forward towards success. Okay, don't let anyone get into your head. Don't let anyone's negative perception of you get you down.
It's not existent. Because, you know, if I fail today, okay, I'm going to learn something from that failure, and I'm going to try again on Tuesday. And I fail, and I'm going to try again on Wednesday. So it doesn't exist.
You know what? Should my ratings go in the tank? That's exactly what I'm going to say to the boss.
And she's trying to make a stupid joke out of it. You know, she doesn't really get the point that Kobe's trying to make. She's like, yeah, look, man, if my bosses say this, you know, and he's going to reframe it now in a great way, because you know, even if you get fired, right, like your life doesn't end at that point. You know, your life still continues. You still get to learn your lessons and apply those lessons to a new part of your life.
Hey, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but you know what?
We should try it again on Thursday.
If your ratings go in the tank, and you know, which they won't, but if they did, you had learned a valuable lesson. You had learned a bunch of ways of how not to make a show that sucks. So then the next one will be better than the last one, right?
So are you telling me then, let's just say all the career statistics that you've compiled, they all still exist, still play for the Lakers, still, and all of that still happens. If you finished your career without a championship, you would not have looked at that as a failure?
No, I would have looked at it as being extremely disappointed because.
And there you go. It is not the fear of failure that he has. It's just a disappointment of himself and the high standards that he lives his life by. Okay. Yeah, being a pro basketball is very boring. You know, the hours you spend on, you know, recovery, on practicing, on keeping yourself in optimum condition to play the sport, right? And that is not just basketball, but you know, even football, hockey, American football. We don't say soccer on this channel; we call it football, which for what it is. You know, it's a very repetitive, very boring grind. Okay, and you get the reward, the payoff for it all is obviously the money, but also the peak experience that you get, you know, when you play in a stadium full of fans, when you score a goal, when you score a point, the winning point, and the whole stadium erupts, and you have that euphoric feeling. You know, that is the reward for doing that very, very boring grind. Okay, but most people aren't willing to suffer the boringness, the grind that you have to go through. Okay, most people aren't willing to put themselves into that position, and you have to remember, yeah, it's a choice you make. It's a choice you make. The decision lies with you. However you want to live your life, you know, be willing to pay the price. But whatever that price is, what I want for you is for it to be a very, very high price. Okay, and if you're going to put your efforts into something, you might as well put it into establishing your own kingdom, become a king, live life at the top. You know, experience everything that the world has to offer. Okay, and then when you do pass away, then you know, you can look back and be happy with how you lived your life.
I had a dream and I had goals that I wanted to accomplish, right? And if I don't accomplish those goals, I have to ask myself why, right? And so from my position, the reason why I would not have accomplished those things is poor leadership, failure to communicate properly with my teammates to put them in positions to be successful, lack of preparation, you know, all those things would be reasons why I don't win, right? So now, if that was the case, in my career, I have to sit and I have to analyze that, and then as I move and I evolve, you know, post basketball into business or whatever, those same weaknesses are going to reveal themselves there, right? So if I don't learn from that, I'm going to struggle here too, right? So I can take those situations and learn from those and have them, you know, make me a better person later in life. But if I don't take that stuff and apply that someplace else, then that's failing, which to me is the worst possible thing you could ever have, is to stop and to not learn.
So from Kobe's perspective, is the only time failure ever happens is when you stop trying. Okay, and up until that place, until it happens, you know, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your lineage, you owe it to the people that support you, that you keep trying and keep going right up until the end. Okay, let's jump into this other video about burnout, because many people, you know, you might be in a position where you've tried many times, where you've given it a go. I mean, you know, me, for example, there's many things I've tried in my life to become successful. Many different jobs I've had, different ideas I've had. I even tried pick up before. I've approached over 4,000 women. And it's something that you test out. And if you don't end up getting the results that you want at the end of it, then you always end up looking around thinking like, what is the point? Because you've been overworked. You've reached a point of where you are just bored of trying. You get no reward, and in essence that is what they call burnout. Okay, and we'll now discuss how to overcome burnout and what the cure is.
Short form. Want to learn faster and help support our videos? Check out our affiliate link in the description for a 20% discount. The same thoughts, the same feelings. When did this start? More importantly, when will it end? Is it going somewhere? Or is it just another distraction from really moving forward? How come every time you move forward, you find yourself paralyzed in action just a few months later? Colors don't glow, light doesn't shine, and trying to find out what matters has become the only thing that matters.
And when people reach a place like that, is they're usually very depressed, and what is depression? You're either expressing yourself and producing in life, pushing out onto life your thoughts, your gifts. You're excited, and you express yourself, which is expressing is you pressing outwards, right? Depression is the opposite, right? It's the world is pushing you down. Okay, and most people are in a position where they're being depressed by the world, and they end up blaming themselves. Okay, you have to always remember it's even if it is your fault, to forgive yourself and to move forward and to start expressing yourself, because that's the only way out of depression.
You're burned out. It's the same old patterns and stimulation, the ones you once found so striking and elusive. So what changed? How come your passion and hard work always seems to reward you with the misery of it not meaning anything?
Burnout is something we've talked about before, whether it be depression, anhedonia, the accelerating work culture. The core of it comes from a frustration due to a lack of positive rewards. You may be overworked, underappreciated, or lacking enthusiasm for your tasks. You might be highly engaged with your work life, but not engaged at all with your physical and mental well-being. The causes stem from the variety of ways that humans feel compelled to complete their tasks. But at the end of the day, you're here, watching a video on burnout to either seek counsel or to numb the existential buzzing of your mind. Thankfully, and is often the case, we can focus our bruised hearts and sunken eyes to the arts for hidden systems at play.
Take this for consideration. This is a melody. Assume this.
Now, this guy's solution is if you find yourself in a place where you are feeling burnt out, where you are feeling down about your life situation, is to turn to art and express yourself through art. And why does that work? Because art is a form of expression. Okay, and when you're expressing yourself, you can't be depressed, because if the word depression is the world is pushing you down. By producing art, by engaging in art, you're expressing some sort of emotion. Okay, and that is the stepping stone. That is the first step towards moving out of depression to expression and into a positive state.
This was the only melody you knew. You'd find some joy in it at first, but as time moves forward and you play it millions of times, it loses its spark. The reward is no longer there. Perhaps a deviation from the melody seems scary.
Isn't it not supposed to be played that way? I mean, would it be wrong to play it another way? I mean, what about another song? What if this whole thing just happens all over?
He these questions that he's having, it's like an existential crisis that he's having right now. Okay, he's asking questions for the world to answer back to him, right? Whereas he is in charge of his life, he is the one producing content, art, and he is the one that should be asking the world. The world should be asking him questions instead of him asking the world for which direction to look in. Okay, he is the one. He is the producer. He's the one telling them, no, this is genius because, and express that to the world.
Again. Plus, you'd have to learn something new. How awfully frightening. But let's say I put a note here, put a note there, maybe play it a little bit faster. What if I played in a different key? I know I like this melody, but now I feel like I'm contributing to it, like I'm actually there in it. The boredom fades away as the curiosity compels you back to the moment. Soon you find yourself playing an entirely new song. But it has no name. It's spontaneous. For example, take a song like Bye Bye Blackbird. Sounds kind of simple, right? Now imagine hearing it 10,000 times, and now you're one of the greatest improvisationalists in jazz in history. How do you think they would play that? I'm talking, of course, about John Coltrane in Stockholm with his mystical quartet playing an almost 20-minute rendition of Bye Bye Blackbird.
One of the reasons he was able to do that is because he mastered his craft. You know, he was somebody who learned everything there was to learn about his instrument, and then because he was a master at it, because he played it at a very exceptional level, he then could move on and create different renditions, create different interpretations, and be able to be seen as a genius for his experimentation. Okay, but to do that, you have to get into a position where you are mastering your craft and seen as a genius.
Now, that doesn't sound too familiar, does it?
The melody, chords, rhythm, anything written down, therefore it just becomes a jumping off point for exploration.
The same nursery rhyme heard by all, unrecognizable due to the strength and courage of their will to express and become greater. An expansion of self that pleases both the internal and spreads to those around. The same routine, the same people, the same thoughts, the same feelings. How can you play between the notes and make something new? Something that's your own.
And that's what a lot of art is, really. It is creating something that's already been created, just a new interpretation of it, a new way of looking at it. And a lot of the time that is what genius is. Okay, and if you want to live a fulfilled life, if you want to live a life where you can have purpose and passion in your life, then you need to enter your zone of genius. You need to find out what you're good at, learn as much as you can about that subject, become a subject matter expert, and then you can move towards finding little nuggets of insight. Okay, and when you present those insights to the world, then you'll be seen as a genius. And then once you're seen as a genius, people look towards you for reassurance, for leadership. You'll be seen as a point of authority, and when you are a point of authority, you become a leader, you can then move towards establishing your kingdom, right? Once you have your kingdom, you are seen as a king, and therefore you will live the best life possible. Okay. Because many people feel depressed, many people have lost all hope, and even a time where like Christmas or the holidays, it's January the 28th now. A month ago was Christmas. Should be a time of celebration, a time of festivity, but many people are feeling socially isolated. Many people have lost all hope. Okay, and we're just going to listen to this guy talk about what the holidays feel like.
Around the corner, and with everything going on when it comes to like Christmas or the other holidays that people celebrate, One thing I gotta say is I don't know why, if it's just me, but like it feels like Christmas is not what it used to be, or at least doesn't feel the same as what it was. Now, I can't be alone on this, but I'm pretty sure a lot of us adults are kind of feeling this right now. Also, the definition of the holidays, man, has definitely changed a shitload since I became an adult as well. Like, I remember as a kid, all we had to do was just go to school, come home, eat some nice dinner and stuff, and open presents and whatnot. But then, like, now it's like you have to go to fucking these stores, you gotta shop for everybody if you want to, and you gotta deal with the crazy people and traffic and all the other stuff. It's kind of overbearing and it's kind of like ridiculously stressful for no reason, it seems like. Like, the holidays aren't terrible, but like, wow, like there's a lot of stuff that goes on within the holidays, even if you don't really have any kids. Another thing I noticed too about the holidays after becoming an adult for a while is, I'm not sure why, but there's a lot of family drama that peaks around this time of the year for a lot of people. And instead of just be able to relax and enjoy the holidays and be grateful with family time, there's a lot of crazy family drama situations that goes down on shit, dude. There's some crazy people outside in public that go kind of hostile over crazy stuff, whatever.
Yeah, many people, think they should be around family, and sometimes your family are not your biggest supporter. Sometimes your family are the ones who are holding you back. Okay, there's 10 billion people in the world, and if you don't get on with your family, there's no rules that say that you should stick with them. Go out there, find the people that you get on most with. That is what I'm doing here. I am looking for the people who are like-minded, people who are looking to change the world, do something with their lives, create kingdoms, become kings, live a life of luxury. um if you're on the same page, then who else would you get on with? It'd be people like me, it'd be people like yourselves, it would be people who also are at the top, moving towards the top and trying to change the world.
It's either Black Friday sales or deals that they can get for the holidays. It's just wow, man. Like, it's always been there for the crazy people, but now it's like people don't hide it as much. I've seen some crazy stuff go down around the holidays as well. I do remember not too long ago I was doing Walmart Spark for extra money, and I was just driving around with my girlfriend and my friend and shit like that. And oh my god, dude, there was this guy that comes up, like we were delivering to a house, and this guy basically just shouts at us saying our house is right here. It's like, we know, but then he starts to like trying to start an argument with me and shit, and I'm just like, bro, it's almost Christmas, and I was obviously going to go to that house anyways because Google Maps
And these are the problems of normal people, right? Like, they he's trying to deliver a package or something, and people are calling him out, because they can't take a little bit of inconvenience in their lives. Okay, that is why society is breaking down. That is why it does feel like there is no more community in the world anymore. Okay, most people are feeling isolated. Most people don't enjoy the time off that they have, the jobs that they have, the people that spend time with. And I, for one, I'm somebody who's had enough of that. I want you to, if you feel a similar way, to reach out. Let me know how you feel about it. What changes in the world do you want to see? I really believe that the world is going to come under techno-feudalism. People will have their rights stripped straight out of them. People won't be able to move, around the globe anymore. 15-minute cities are a thing, and a lot of people, this will happen while a lot of people are literally sleepwalking towards their own demise. Okay, if you're someone who wants to escape the system, wants to start something new, wants to be part of something new, then let me know.
tells you exactly where everything's at, but this is
Okay, I've had enough of this guy. Let's go to this other final video that we wanted to check about Canada and why Canada is a Ponzi scheme.
1995. You are a high school teacher in a suburb of Toronto or Vancouver. You drive a Honda Civic. You have a modest pension. You decide to buy a house. It's a nice house, red brick, 3 bedrooms, a big backyard with a maple tree. It cost you $180,000. It feels expensive, sure. You have to budget. You have to skip the fancy vacations. But the math works. Your salary covers the mortgage, the groceries.
And that's a big thing with today's society. It's like, the word that he used there is that the maths works. A lot of people are looking at the world right now, and it's like the maths doesn't work anymore. Okay, like inflation is growing exponentially higher than average salaries. Okay, so if you're working a normal job, like a teacher, for example, in that example, you know, the job from your teaching salary isn't going to catch up with inflation. Okay, you're always going to be out earned by inflation. What I mean by that is you know, the cost of things are going up faster than your salary, and therefore you won't be able to afford things. The cost of living crisis that is, you know, really across the globe right now is in full effect because of this phenomena. Okay, and the only way to escape it is to not play in the system, not to be part of the system, to escape the system and build a new system.
Groceries and the gas, with enough left over to put some money away for a rainy day. You are living the promise. You're living in the boring, stable, prosperous fortress of the North, Canada. Now, snap your fingers. It is 2026. You're standing in front of that exact same house. The bricks are a little older. The maple tree is a little bigger. But now there's a for sale sign on the lawn, and the asking price is $2.2 million. Inside that house, there is no longer a single family. The basement has been converted into a separate unit, rented out to 3 international students sleeping on mattresses on the floor.
And that is where most people find themselves, is in, you know, like things that were, you know, seen as, you know, just normal, are now being squeezed by people in charge, by the elites, and people have to monetize every aspect of their lives. Okay, and what I mean by that is the elites, you know, they're feeding you lies, they're feeding you a false sense of security, whilst you are living in the haze, basically. I want you to escape that haze. I want you to build something new, because the elites will keep on extracting resources, extracting money out of its citizens and selling them down the river.
The main floor is occupied by a young couple, both professionals, both making 6 figures, who are drowning in so much debt that they are terrified to have children. They are the same people as that teacher in 1995. They did everything right. They followed the rules. But the game changed.
And that is why people are failing, because they follow the rules. Okay, if you play by the rules, then the people in charge of the game, they know what your next move is. They know what your next step is and how they can extract most value out of you, because they know that you will always stick to the rules. If you're willing to divert from the rules, if you're willing to start something new, if you're willing to take charge of your own life, and build, you know, and live life by your own rules, then, you know, the elites won't be able to understand where you're going, guess what you're about to do, and therefore you can move on with your life and become the ruler of your own destiny.
We are looking at a crime scene, but there's no blood and there's no yellow tape. There's just a polite, smiling country that has quietly decided to eat its own young. If you're under the age of 40 in Canada...
Oh, I like that. Eating its own young. And that is what a lot of Western countries are doing. They're literally cannibalizing themselves. You know, there's no regard for humanity anymore. It is just about numbers on the screen, how much value those numbers are bringing to you, to your government, through taxation, through GDP growth. And then they use that to distract you with other problems up over here. And they are, you know, taxing you higher and higher. You know, services are getting shittier and shittier, and you end up in a position where you're worse off. Okay, and then they'll blame it on something like, you know, totally irrelevant, like immigration, like racism, like DEI, or other problems like, you know, climate change, for example. When the real problem is, you know, it's just a class war. It's either the elites at the top and everyone else at the bottom. Okay, and I want you to not suffer like that anymore. I want you to escape that prison, in essence, escape the plantation, move on to the top, become a leader yourself, become part of the elite, establish your own elite circle.
You are not crazy. You're not lazy. You are the victim of a 40-year economic experiment that has gone catastrophically wrong. You are living in a country that has stopped investing in the future and started cannibalizing the present. Today, We are going to peel back the polite veneer of Canadian society. We are going to look at the math that the news anchors gloss over. We are going to talk about the hidden mechanism that turned a G7 industrial power into a massive real estate hedge fund with a flag. This is the story of how the Canadian dream.
Yeah, I know the real estate in Canada is crazy. I think Vancouver is the most expensive place to live in terms of real estate. And people are just, because people see housing property as a frugal, as a safe investment. Okay, and because you have more and more people moving to these countries, driving up the price of living, the cost of housing is going up. Houses are not being built as fast. The pandemic had a big influence on that. Property prices are just going up and up and up, and that bubble at some stage will pop. Especially if you have aging population. The problem is, everything should be cyclical. Everything should go. Every market should have a boom and bust, because that's the only way that will ever self-correct. But when you have government intervention, for example, propping up the housing market, okay, there are trickle-down effects down the line. Okay, for example, here in the UK, houses are not affordable for first-time buyers. Okay, because salaries aren't going up, so young people are putting off having families. Young people are putting off starting their the real adult life, for example. Right? It's just a prolonged kind of adolescence, in essence, that people have up until their 30s and 40s. And if in 2008 the housing market did crash, there would have been short-term pain, yes, but there also would have been a new correction where new buyers come in, buy houses, start families, and that is how you have youth being injected into the economic system. But because the UK and really governments around the world haven't done that, there are big economic consequences where you have people who right now can't afford to live.
Dream became a lucid nightmare. Let's rewind. To understand why you feel poor in a rich country, you have to understand that the word rich has changed its meaning. In the 20th century, a rich country was a country that made things. It was a country where productivity went up, so wages went up. It was a factory. In the 21st century, Canada decided to stop being a factory and start being a casino. The data is screaming this at us if you know where to look. If you look at the OECD projections for the next 30 years, the years that define your career and your retirement, Canada is projected to be the worst performing advanced economy on the planet. Dead last. Why? Because we caught a disease. It is a specific economic sickness called the productivity trap. For the last 20 years, while the Americans were building tech giants and the Asians were building advanced manufacturing, Canadian business decided to stop innovating. Why invest $10 million in a new factory or a new software startup or a new R&D lab, which is risky and hard, when you can just buy a plot of land, sit on it for 5 years, and make a tax-free fortune?
Yeah, so what it did is, the incentives for people to invest in land, invest in real estate, it stops innovation. Instead of creating a economy where risk is rewarded, the rewards go people who play it safe. Okay, and then what you do is you end up building a society where everybody's playing it safe, no one takes a risk, and then when things need to be deviated, when you need to take charge of your life, become a risk taker, start setting new rules for yourself, you aren't able to, because you have lost touch with your cutting edge, your ability to take risks. Okay, it's only one life that you get to live, and you might as well become a risk taker. You might as well not be consumed with fear, stopped by fear, consumed with self-doubt. Go out there, establish a new kingdom, build a kingdom, be seen as somebody who is a king. And then once you reach the top, there'll be other people like myself who will be there to share the spoils of war with you.
Is the hidden mechanism, the asset economy. We built an economy where it pays more to own things than to do things. Think about the psychological toll of this. If you work a job, you pay income tax, you pay payroll tax, you pay sales tax, you contribute to society. But if you bought a house in Kitsilano or the beaches in 2005, you earned more money last year by sleeping in your bed than a heart surgeon earned saving lives. That house earned tax-free capital gains. The surgeon paid 53% marginal tax. The message the system sends is clear. Labor is for suckers. Asset.
Yep. Labor is for suckers, okay? If you're still working a job, if your dream is to carry on working and not be the owner of resources, not to be part of the conversations of key decision makers, then you will always be seen as a sucker, okay? Stop being a work slave, stop being a soldier, stop being somebody who is just there to help other people in the position of power make profit. Become somebody who owns the resources, the assets, the capital, and become a king. Oh, hang on.
If you want a cell phone plan in Europe, you pay 20 euros for unlimited data. Labor is for suckers. Asset ownership is for kings. And this brings us to the villain of our story. And in Canada,
Passive ownership is for kings. I want you to make every type of have every type of ownership. Have passive ownership, have active ownership. Okay, we aren't being passive with what we're trying to do. We're trying to be active. We're trying to take over other people's land. We're trying to take over other people's resources, because we want to establish a new lineage, a new universe where we build an alliance of kings in the United Kingly Alliance and become the de facto rulers.
the villain isn't a single person. It is a structure. It is the oligopoly. If you walk into a grocery store in the United States, you have 50 choices. In Canada, you have 3. If you want a cell phone plan in Europe, you pay 20 euros for unlimited data. In Canada, you pay $80 for a data cap that feels like it's from 2012. Canada is essentially 3 mining companies, 5 banks, and 3 grocery chains in a trench coat. These monopolies are protected by the government. They are shielded from foreign competition. This is why you pay some of the highest fees in the world for banking, for internet, for air travel. This is the hidden tax of living in Canada. Every time you tap your card, a few percentage points are siphoned off to a protected class of shareholders who face zero competition. So you have stagnant wages because of low productivity, and
and people believe that they're married to the country that they live in, but however, the country that you live in sets the rules, sets, in that, for example, sets the prices of things, goods and services, and doesn't allow for competition and efficiency to enter the Canadian system. Okay. The downwards effects of that would be, especially in a time where we live in a globalized world where we all have access to the internet, and you can see how other people living across the world. When you have access to that type of information, then and you start questioning what the fuck is going on here. You see what the system is, and that the system is wrong, and that you could essentially be living a better life. Okay. And what I'm telling you is, to instead of try and search for what is the correct way to live, what is the best possible place to live, I want you to really think about how you want to live your life and to establish your own land. Okay. Be in charge of your own life, set the rules, become a king, and establish your kingdom. And you will have followers, you will have people who aspire to be like you, and then you can take your group of people towards a new and better future.
you have sky-high costs because of the oligopoly. That is a squeeze. But it's not the death blow. The death blow is the housing trap. All right, we need to talk about the decision Canada made around 2008. When the rest of the world and its housing bubbles burst, Canada's didn't. We patted ourselves on the back. We said, look how stable our banks are. But we didn't fix the problem. We doubled down. We lowered interest rates to near zero, and we kept them there. We invited the world's capital to park itself in Canadian condos. We turned housing from shelter, a basic human right, into a speculative financial asset traded like Bitcoin. And the result is a feudal system. I use that word carefully. Feudalism. A system where your status is determined by your relationship to land. If you are young in Canada today, your financial destiny is not determined by how hard.
And governments are going to continue to prop up housing prices because they don't want angry voters, especially in a society where you have declining birth rates. Okay, so the people in charge and the people who will be voting will still be people the elderly people who most likely own property. And if most people invest in property in the hopes of when they retire that those things, those assets will pay for their life in their retirement, in essence, right? And that is why the government is incentivized to prop up housing prices, to keep that pocket of voters, which is a large pocket, happy.
You work, or how smart you are, or what degree you have. It is determined by one thing: the bank of mom and dad. If your parents own a home, they can leverage it. They can.
So the guy's basically telling have nepotism, right? Just make sure everything will be all right as long as you have wealthy parents. The vast majority of people don't have access to those luxuries. They don't have access to wealthy parents, and they're more likely to suffer.
Gift you a down payment. You can enter the castle. You become a member of the landed gentry. If your parents rent, you are a serf. You will spend 50, 60, maybe 70% of your after-tax income paying off the mortgage of someone else. You are paying for their retirement with your poverty. This is the intergenerational war that nobody in Ottawa wants to admit is happening. The baby boomers, and I'm not blaming them individually, they just played the game as it was written, are sitting on.
They didn't even play the game. They were just right place, right time, and they were able to, with very little effort, put themselves in a very good situation. Okay, it was post-war. It was a situation where global trade was opening up. New innovations of technology was improving the quality of life, the quality of manufacturing, and many societies became consumer-based societies, and global countries around the world were incentivized not to start new wars, but to feed the machine of capitalism. And when you had, it was just a period of time where people felt safe enough, where, people had access to banking, low mortgages, stable jobs, and they were literally just, and because house prices were so low back then, they were able to take advantage of that. Whereas now, you need 2 household incomes just to pay for, a very small property in Ottawa. Whereas before, you could have paid off a house, within 5-10 years easily. Or whereas now you need to take out a 30-35-year mortgage.
Trillions of dollars of real estate wealth. They vote to restrict supply, they vote to keep their neighborhoods quaint and low density. They fight every new apartment building at the city council meetings. They are pulling up the ladder, and the young look up.
Yeah, and the reason they're doing that is to prop up the price of their houses, right? If you have new apartment buildings being built, then you're more likely to see the value of your house go down, because there are alternatives, places for people to live in, right? So as long as something is scarce, as long as housing is scarce, as long as land is scarce, houses will always remain expensive.
At that ladder, and they realize it's gone. This leads to a phenomenon called delayed adulthood. It's a polite term for a tragedy. In the 1970s, the average age of a first-time homebuyer was 25. Today, in the major cities, it is pushing 37 or 38. That is a decade and a half of lost.
And that number is going to continue to rise until we get to a place where people, if you remember that famous billboard by the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Okay. And that is the position where we will be pushed towards, where society is headed. Okay. You won't own nothing. You won't have access to any actual assets. You'll just be locked up in your room in a 50-minute city, plugged into the internet, plugged into the metaverse, while you're distracted, while the elites rob and pillage behind our backs. Okay. So, I'm not here to wake everyone up. I'm not here to, be like, oh no, the world's going to shit. You can see that this world, the way it is currently going, is a slow car crash waiting to happen. My hope is that I can find like-minded people who see what the world is, see what it is, see what really is happening, wake the fuck up, and people who want to do something about it, right? We won't be able to save everyone. Most people will be eliminated. Most people will lose in life, okay? However, people that we want to spend time with, people who understand what we're doing, what we're trying to build, and want to connect with us, build kingdoms with us, build new lands, build a whole new system with us, they'll be safe because we'll be able to protect them.
Time. Think about what happens in those lost years. You don't have kids because you don't have a bedroom for them. Canada's fertility rate has collapsed to 1.33, an all-time low. We are literally dying out because we made it too expensive to reproduce. You don't start a business because you can't take the risk. If you miss a rent payment, you're homeless. So you take the safe, boring corporate job. You stifle.
And corporate jobs are, they're running out of as well, right? Positions at corporate jobs because, you have new entrants, younger people coming in, and they aren't able to get jobs because, of migration of other people, of higher competition. Back in the day, you could apply to maybe 2 jobs and get one. Now you have to apply to, in the hundreds just to get a couple of job interviews. Okay, the job market out there is crazy.
Your own potential. You don't move for a better opportunity because you are terrified of losing your rent-controlled apartment. You are trapped in place. This is how a dynamic, young country turns into a stagnant old museum. And then we have to talk about the accelerant, the policy that took a fire and turned it into an inferno, the population trap. For years, the Canadian consensus was that immigration is an unalloyed good. And culturally, it is. Canada is a welcoming place. But economics is about supply and demand. It is cold, unfeeling math. In the last few years, the Canadian government decided to spike the population growth rate to levels seen in sub-Saharan Africa. We brought in over 1 million people in a single year. But we didn't build 1 million homes. We didn't build 1 million hospital beds.
So, they got new people into the country, but they haven't built the, infrastructure. They haven't made amends to the infrastructure to handle those people. Okay, and it's not even just that they're bringing in migrants. It's like, what type of lives will those people live? Okay, and they're just kind of throwing shit at the wall, hoping that people will come here, start working, start becoming new taxpayers in the system. But they've also created a place where it's harder to take risks, where all these jobs that they can take are in essence within the service industry. Okay, and they end up being the slaves to the natives, right? However, the society created for the natives of that land isn't great. Everything's expensive. Service isn't great, and then the blame does get shifted back onto the immigrants.
We didn't build 1 million seats on the GO train. We brought in hundreds of thousands of temporary residents and international students. Many of these students were sold a lie. Recruiters in India and Nigeria told them, "Come to Canada, it's the land of opportunity." They arrived and they found themselves sleeping 4 to a room in Brampton or Surrey, delivering Uber Eats in the snow, paying exorbitant tuition to strip mall colleges that exist solely to print diplomas for permanent residency applications. This isn't immigration. It is a labor supply shock. By flooding the market with low-skilled labor, we gave the oligopolies a gift. Why?
Yeah, and you can see how it is a system of slavery. It is a system built for the elites to win, to extract every little bit of resource, right? Even if they can't already squeeze everything out of its current population, they add new members, to that population by allowing immigrants to come over and contribute to the economy. Who is the beneficiary of it, right? House prices will continue to go up, because if you have 1 million people coming into that system, the price of housing will increase. Okay. And it is the young who suffer, and in the end they will inherit a land that is not worth fighting for, that is not worth living in. Most people will leave, and people are ready to look for something new, and that is where you come in. That is where you come and offer your solutions, your way of viewing the world, and build a new land for these people to inhabit.
Why invest in automation? Why invest in productivity? Why raise wages? You can just hire a desperate student for minimum wage. This suppressed wages for the working class and the youth, while simultaneously skyrocketing the demand for rent. It was a wealth transfer from the poor, who rent and work for wages, to the rich, who own assets and hire labor. It is a policy that looks progressive on a pamphlet, but operates like 19th century robber baron capitalism in practice. So, where does this leave you? The 28-year-old in the basement apartment? It leaves you in a state of...
And when you are in that situation, the world will look at you, be like, "Oh, why are you not doing better? Why are you not?" The boomers will look down at you, be like, when I was your age, I was doing this. I had like a family of 4, and I owned like 3 fucking houses, because they lived in a better economic time, and because people measure the economy by GDP, for example, and you can see, GDP growth, within a nation, they'll feed those statistics to you and say, look, man, the economy is doing well, you should be as well. But it's like, you really have to look at which people in the economy are doing well. It is the big corporations, it is the big multinationals, and they're the ones that are benefiting from
Cognitive dissonance. You walk past the luxury condos in Vancouver, empty, owned by shell companies. You see the grocery prices climbing every week. You hear the politicians talking about GDP growth. But
yeah, exactly
GDP growth means nothing if the population is growing faster than the economy. That is called capital dilution. The pie is getting slightly bigger, but there are a million more people at the table holding forks. Your slice is getting smaller per capita.
Yeah, and that is what happens when you end up at the bottom, and that is the position that I do not want you to be in. Okay, if you understand what I'm saying, if you understand what I'm trying to do here, then you need to reach out to me. We need to work together. We need to start something new. We need to bring our creative ideas into one place, and that is the only way that we can look towards prosperity, to building a better and brighter future. But that is it for today. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are, and I will see you tomorrow.